+37 is now history. End of WW2 in Europe and division of Germany. We know that Nazi Germany's surrender was a two-part process in May 1945, with initial capitulation to the Western Allies on May 7 in Reims and a subsequent, separate surrender to the Soviet Union in Berlin on May 8, effective May 9. Following this unconditional surrender and the agreements reached at the Potsdam Conference, Germany was indeed divided into 4 occupation zones, each administered by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Similarly, Berlin, located within the Soviet zone, was also divided into 4 sectors. As the Cold War took hold, the contrasting political and economic systems of the occupying powers solidified the division. This ultimately led to the formal creation of 2 distinct German states in 1949, the Federal Republic of Germany, FRG, or West Germany, emerging from the unification of the American, British, and French zones as a democratic nation aligned with the West, and the German Democratic Republic, GDR, or East Germany, formed from the Soviet zone as a communist state under Soviet influence. This division of Germany became a significant symbol during the Cold War. International Telecommunication Union, ITU, dialing codes distribution. Following the division of Germany in 1949, the differing political and social landscapes of East and West Germany gradually extended to infrastructural and administrative distinctions. A significant step in this divergence occurred in 1964 when the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, began the systematic allocation of international dialing codes. As distinct entities on the world stage, both German states received their own codes. West Germany was assigned the International Dialing Code +49, reflecting its integration with the Western world's telecommunication standards. Simultaneously, East Germany was allocated the Dialing Code +37, setting it apart within the Soviet sphere of influence. These distinct codes served not only a practical purpose for international communication but also underscored the political and ideological separation that defined the 2 Germanys during the Cold War era, further solidifying their identities as separate nations in the global telecommunications network. Some history of the German Democratic Republic or the former East Germany's telecommunications and telephone services. The history of telecommunication and telephone services in East Germany, GDR, was intrinsically linked to its political and economic system under Soviet influence. Unlike the rapid advancements seen in West Germany, the development of East German telecommunications was characterized by slower progress and a focus on state control. The infrastructure inherited after World War II was largely outdated, and investment in modernization was often secondary to other industrial and military priorities. Consequently, obtaining a private telephone connection for household use could take several years, a stark contrast to the more readily available services in the West. This waiting period reflected not only the limited infrastructure but also the centralized planning and bureaucratic processes that governed resource allocation. The Deutsche Post of the GDR held a monopoly over postal and telecommunication services. Telephone density remained significantly lower compared to the West, with long waiting lists for private connections being commonplace. The technology employed was generally older, with manual exchanges persisting for a longer period in some areas. While efforts were made to expand the network, resource allocation and technological limitations hindered rapid development. One potential advantage, however, was the relative affordability of basic telephone service once a connection was established, as prices were heavily subsidized by the state. On the other hand, the limited availability and outdated technology often resulted in poor call quality and network congestion. International connectivity was also restricted, reflecting the GDR's isolation within the Eastern Bloc. Direct dialing to the West was not always straightforward, and calls often had to go through operators, adding time and complexity. The allocation of the +37 dialing code by the ITU in 1964 formally distinguished East Germany within the global telecommunications landscape, separate from West Germany's +49. This separation mirrored the broader political divide. Towards the late 1980s, as the political climate began to shift, there were some initiatives to modernize the network, often involving collaborations with Western companies. However, the fundamental gap in infrastructure and technology compared to West Germany remained substantial. The reunification in 1990 brought the rapid integration of the East German telecommunication system into the more advanced West German network, requiring significant investment and modernization to bring it up to par. The legacy of this slower development was evident in the initial years after reunification as the infrastructure was upgraded, and former East Germans experienced a rapid transformation in their access to telecommunication services. A brief comparison between East German and West German telecommunications and telephone services. East and West German telecommunication and telephone services presented a stark contrast during the Cold War. West Germany rapidly developed an advanced telecommunications system, benefiting from its market economy and integration with Western technology. Telephone access was relatively widespread, and infrastructure modernization progressed steadily. In contrast, East Germany's state-controlled system lagged significantly. Obtaining a private telephone connection often took years due to limited infrastructure and centralized planning that prioritized other sectors. Technologically, West Germany embraced newer advancements more quickly, leading to better call quality and network efficiency. East Germany relied on older technology, with manual exchanges persisting longer and overall telephone density remaining low. International connectivity also differed significantly. West Germany had relatively open international lines, while East Germany's connections to the West were restricted and often routed through operators. While basic telephone service in East Germany was affordable due to state subsidies, the limited availability and outdated technology were major drawbacks. The +49 and +37 dialing codes assigned by the ITU in 1964 symbolized this fundamental division in their telecommunications identities. The reunification in 1990 highlighted the vast disparity, necessitating substantial investment to modernize the antiquated East German network and integrate it with the West's superior infrastructure. Reunification of Germany. The reunification of Germany was a swift and transformative process, primarily driven by the crumbling of the East German regime in late 1989 following increasing public protests and the symbolic fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9. The desire for unification among East Germans was palpable, fueled by economic disparities and the longing for freedom and democratic values prevalent in the West. Politically, the process was carefully navigated by Chancellor Helmut Kohl of West Germany, who presented a 10-point plan for reunification. Negotiations involved the two German states and the four Allied powers, the US, UK, France, and the Soviet Union, culminating in the 2+4 Treaty. This treaty granted full sovereignty to a unified Germany and paved the way for unification under Article 23 of the West German Basic Law. Economically, the integration was a significant undertaking, involving the introduction of the Deutsche Mark in East Germany in July 1990 and the gradual merging of their economic systems. Finally, on October 3, 1990, East Germany officially acceded to the Federal Republic of Germany, marking the end of division and the birth of a unified German nation within its expanded territory. +37 East Germany's code dissolved and ITU sent it into retirement. The international dialing code +37 holds a unique place in telecommunications history, indelibly linked to the former German Democratic Republic, GDR, or East Germany.